Electrocast.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It is Saturday morning, and I'm drinking a hot cup of Bottom Gun coffee from my friends at bottomguncoffee.com. I have another great show lined up for you, but before we get started, I just wanted to mention my latest leadership book. It's called You Have the Watch, and it's available on my website and on Amazon. In fact, it's already a #1 new release and a bestseller on Amazon. I'm really excited about this book because it is not actually a book. It is a guided journal for leaders that will take you through an entire year of leadership training. There are 50 themes in the book, and each day you will reflect on a different facet of that theme. Now, this journal is designed to be on your desk at work for you to read and reflect on for about 15 minutes each morning. Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them, and this journal helps you practice those skills. So if you're interested in this guided journal, go to youhavethewatch.com or Amazon to pick up your copy today. If you're looking for other ways to support what I do on this show, purchase any one of my books at johnsrennie.com, and podcast listeners can use the discount code DEEP at checkout to get additional savings. Well, that is it. Today, my guest is David Hollenbach. David is a U.S. Navy veteran, retired Fire Department Battalion Chief, author, and podcast host. He has written a new book called Fireproof, which is helping people overcome failure, find their true purpose, and achieve their life's goals. This was an inspiring conversation that I know you're going to enjoy. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20-plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world, actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by David Hollenbach. David is a speaker, coach, author, podcast host, and mentor. He is a U.S. Navy veteran and retired Fire Department Battalion Chief. He is the author of a new book called Fireproof, Your Grand Strategy for Transforming Failure into Fuel for Your Future. This book helps anyone seeking to overcome their limiting beliefs and achieve their life goals even after a failure. This book helps readers uncover their core values and discover their true life's purpose. And I'm excited to have him on the show today. So, Dave, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, John. I really, really appreciate you having me on. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and couple of shipmates.
Yes, exactly. I love having veterans on the show, but Navy veterans, it's 2 times better than that, just because of that common experience. So I love it. I think maybe you might be the first. I mean, obviously we're all trained as firefighters in the Navy, but you might be the true first firefighter that I've had on the show. So, and a lot of people who. A lot of fire chiefs actually read my books, and I get a lot of input from people that are in the fire service. So this is really exciting to get someone who's been in that service and is led in that area. So I'm excited to have you on the show for that purpose. So let's just go ahead and get started. So first of all, tell us about your background. You start out in the Navy, and then right after the Navy, you went right into the fire service. You spent a long time there. Why did you choose that route? Why the Navy? And then why did you go into the fire service right after that?
Well, my dad, when I was born in the Navy hospital at Orlando Naval Training Center.
Yes.
It doesn't exist anymore, but that's...
I was stationed there for 6 months. I know it.
Yeah. Well, so I grew up right down the road. And so I grew up with Navy being a part of my history, my heritage. And I had aspirations of going to the Naval Academy. I became a Sea Cadet. Started off in the Navy League and then went into being a Sea Cadet. So when I ended up not getting the grades, and it was just being able to get into the Naval Academy is just an incredible feat in and of itself. So kudos to those that make it. I was not one of them. I ended up enlisting and became a gas turbine mechanic. I had broke my leg when I was in high school, a really bad break, had a lot of surgeries to repair it. And I wasn't able to enlist initially. So I was going to college, taking fire science classes, all that stuff, I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps in some way. And so that was the other thing. After my dad got out of the Navy, he became a firefighter. And I grew up with him being a firefighter. And just,
so your dad was in the Navy and a firefighter. So there probably explains a little bit of the motivation behind it. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. And so I ended up enlisting in the Navy and breaking my leg. While I was in A school. I never actually got to a ship. I spent 14 months in Great Lakes, and that was my Navy career.
Well, my son is there now. He's trying to escape Great Lakes. He's been there a year and a half from boot camp to all his schools, and he's trying to escape right now. So he's finally getting to his next training station. But yeah, he's spent a lot of time there. So 2 winters is not fun in Great Lakes.
Yeah, no, that's a rough place to spend winter.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got out of the service, and then you went right to work for a fire department, it sounds like.
Well, no, not exactly. I got out, and as you can imagine, that dream of being a sailor and traveling the world, and when I was discharged, that was a pretty hard pill to swallow. Mm-hmm. So when I got back home, I spent some time feeling sorry for myself and doing construction. And it was actually when I was learning how to finish concrete is when I'm like, I really don't want to do this.
Yeah. Those jobs tend to make you change your career or start thinking differently about your future when you're doing those hard labor jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went back to school, finished my associate's degree, and then decided to go to the fire academy and pick up where I had left off when I joined the Navy. So, that was the part that I left out. When I was in college, I got launched off of a tractor fender. I was in a work study program taking care of the baseball fields at the college. And one day I was riding on the fender of the tractor that we would drag the infield with. And the guy driving, he was going pretty fast into the outfield of this particular practice field where there was a good dip. And I just launched off the fender. And when I landed, one of the screws that was in the top of my tibia backed out. And that was what was preventing me from enlisting. I got to get all the hardware removed. And once I healed up, I was allowed to enlist with a medical waiver. The medical waiver essentially says if you damage this leg, we're not responsible, and you will be discharged. And then in A school, I fell on the stairs. Well, so we were all running up the stairs to get to the showers, wintertime after PT, just to get a little bit of hot water, and somebody's knee hit my heel. I tripped, and a bunch of guys fell on top of me, broke the same dang leg, and I ended up getting discharged. I finished A school, graduated second in my class, thought maybe they would let me kind of skate through, and I had orders to go to Yokosuka, and when I went to do the overseas screening, that's when they caught me.
Yep. That's the way it goes sometimes with the Navy. So you got in the fire service and you moved up fairly quickly. I mean, looking at your career, you moved up fairly quickly, and then you end up being in, being the chief, battalion chief in the department. What would you attribute you moving up so quickly throughout your career? What was it that you would say was the one thing that allowed you to move up like that?
Well, the first part of my career, I was a firefighter, obviously, and I made some mistakes early on. I felt like I was a really, really good firefighter, but I was young and I was pretty cocky, and I think I was a little bit full of myself. And sometimes, and there's a saying that I have on my website, and it's be humble or be humbled. And life has a way of humbling you when you don't take it upon yourself. So I was kind of a cocky young firefighter, and was very good at what I did. And it was December 31st, 2000. I was celebrating, had too much to drink, got pulled over, was arrested for a DUI, and then ultimately I was terminated from the fire department. I went through the grievance process and was reinstated, but that experience was very humbling.
Like a wake-up call.
Yeah. And so when I was ultimately terminated in July of 2001, on September 8th, I fell off of a 3-story apartment building. I was working on the roof and I fell off it and broke my back. On the morning of September 11th, I was laying on my couch, high on painkillers, thinking that what was happening was just a movie. And when I sobered up a little bit, that's when I learned that a lot of my brother firefighters had died that morning, and there was nothing I could do. And that was the last time I ever took a narcotic. The rest of my recovery, I took ibuprofen and Celebrex. Those were, anti-inflammatories that I used to help minimize the pain. But that was that experience. And then the alternative to actually working in the fire department was doing roofing, construction, framing, all that stuff. And when I got reinstated, I approached everything with a whole new attitude and a whole new appreciation, because I had already lost it once. I didn't want to lose it again, and I embarrassed my family and my dad, having retired from that same department. Here I am. I'm the third, so I got his name and my grandfather's name, and here I am, dragging it through the mud with my immature behavior. So I didn't want the rest of my career to end up like that. So I worked really, really hard. I just, everything I did with a purpose. I wanted to be the best at everything that I did, but I also wanted to help those around me achieve the same things. And it was a way of helping me stay centered and stay focused on, it wasn't about me. It was about the job and about helping the people in the community on their worst day. So I just wanted to be the best. I wanted to be that guy that when I arrived on scene, it wasn't just the citizen that was going, oh, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. But the other firefighters would have that opinion of me, like, oh, I'm really glad that he's here. Mm-hmm. And to be able to achieve that, you have to be really, really good at your chosen profession, regardless of what it is. And so I feel like I did a pretty good job. And it just led into promotions. If you want to make changes, you got to move up where you have a little more influence. And when you move up, you have to work really hard at mastering that position before you go to the next one. And I just worked really, really hard at each position that I held so that not only could I operate in that, but I could teach somebody else how to be really, really good at it.
You remember a point where you went from where you realized that I'm no longer like a doer, I'm more of a leader, because as you start off, most of us in our careers, we're doers, right? But as we progress and we move up, our job responsibilities change and we do less doing and we do more leading. Did you remember the time in your career where you say, well, really, it's more about influence. It's more about teaching. It's more about directing and less about how great I am inside the building, wearing the gear and putting out the fire. Do you remember that moment? And what did you think through that process? Well, what was your transformation like becoming a leader?
Well, there was two actual, two very profound events or timeframes that I could talk about. So the first one would be when I went from being the driver operator, the engineer on a fire truck, to being the lieutenant, to being responsible for a fire station, the equipment, and the crew. My first station, the crew there was established. They were senior people. My driver was, getting close to retirement. And she had spent the bulk of her career in special operations. So she was a wealth of knowledge that, when I came into that station, I'm looking at these people and their experience, and I'm like, man, why in the world would they follow me anywhere?
Yeah.
And when that was a huge smack in the face. Like, man, I might have taken this position a little early. And that's when I actually found this leadership video online. It was actually the School of Leadership at the United States Naval Academy. And funny enough, that Leadership Academy is named after Admiral James Stockdale. Well, there was a Marine Corps colonel that was talking to a group of midshipmen before their graduation, and he does this talk on the 3 C's of leadership: competence, courage, and compassion. And when I listened to that lecture, that's when I'm like, all right, this is what I got to do. And that piece was the competence part. The people that you're leading want to know that you know your job really, really well, or you're working really hard at getting good at it. And the only way that they can come to that conclusion is by your actions. You can talk all day long, but that doesn't mean anything if they don't see it.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
And then the next step, all right, because in that position as lieutenant, I'm still operating in some capacity on the fire ground where I'm actually doing work and getting dirty. Not to the same degree as a firefighter, but still to some degree. When I made Battalion Chief, that's when I was responsible for 6 fire stations and all those people. And then being the one that is ultimately in charge of operations on a big incident. So that's when you have to really trust that the people inside are carrying out what you ask them to do and that they're operating within the SOPs and just the way that you handle that as a leader is by building those relationships before you ever get to that point, and knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are and working really hard at developing them so that you know what you're getting when you ask them to do something, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you're no longer, it's like the coach. The coach can't be on the field. You know, you've got to train your people, you got to recruit, train, develop, and then you got to step off the field. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do, to step off the field and trust the people that you have in your group to be able to carry out your actions, especially when you're on the sidelines and you're not in the building, you're not in, in there. And it's hard sometimes. I know for myself, it's hard because I know how to do things and you want to jump in and you want to help, but you also have to let your people bring out their best and bring their best to the table. And, but it is hard to make that transition and to sort of let go and trust the people that you've trained. It sounds like you had to do that. You couldn't, the battalion chief doesn't go running into the fire first, right? Unfortunately.
No. Actually, this is a really cool story. One of the last big fires that I was on, I got assigned as the Division 3. So I was on the 3rd floor of this apartment complex. There was already a battalion chief on scene that had established command. And because this fire became a second alarm, another battalion chief was added and an assistant chief. So I get there on scene and immediately get assigned to the operations on the 3rd floor where I'm managing a lot of crews. And it was like, oh man, this is so, you're a kid again. Like you get to get a little bit dirty.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. That's interesting. So I want to talk about your book because I think that's going to be really kind of something to talk about here. That's important. You've got a new book. It's called Fireproof. Now, why did you feel the need, or why were you compelled to write this book? Who is it for?
Well, it started off as a leadership book for the fire service.
Right.
And shortly after, 2019 was a really tough year for me. And I was struggling with PTSD, and I made some pretty big mistakes in my personal life that ultimately resulted in me being terminated a second time. And when I left the fire department at that point, I had enough time in that I could retire, but I had to do a lot of reflecting, like, who am I? And I knew the decisions that I made were not consistent with my values. And I really had to dig deep and like, man, maybe I'm not the man I thought I was, and ultimately, I had to take care of my mental health. I had to deal with the PTSD, and really, I had spent so much of my life identifying as a fire department professional, that was my identity.
Yeah.
And now I'm no longer that.
Yeah.
And you start, and who am I?
Yeah.
And at that point is when I really started reading a lot of philosophy, and I found this program at Yale. It was the Grand Strategy program at Yale University that I found a book written by its founder. And I read that book, and I just started the program intrigued me, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And essentially what it is it's a program to develop future world leaders. And they study literature on strategy from the past. All the books like, The Art of War, On War by Clausewitz, and the Prince by Machiavelli, and the history of the Peloponnesian War, and all these books. But, it's not exactly applicable to this day and age, but you can see how these world leaders throughout time have made decisions. What was their logic? What was their thinking process? And what kind of things can you use out of those pieces of literature and apply them to what you're doing now? And it just brings this other layer. And I was thinking, if I could apply this to my own life and look at all of these writings from history's greatest thinkers and religious leaders and philosophers, and what do they feel is the meaning of life? What is the purpose? Why are we here? And how can you identify, how can you sit there and say, this is my identity, this is who I am? And so after going through that process myself, I found that there's some common threads through time, and I wanted to apply that to my book about leadership, because one of the things, and I'm sure you would agree with this, is that when you're in a leadership position, if you're not really good at leading yourself, you're not going to be very successful at leading others.
Oh, yeah. I talk about this a lot. It's the put your mask on first before helping others, right? You can't be helping your team if you are dealing with your own challenges, right? So it's mental, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's financial. Are you taking care of those things? Your family, are you taking care of that? And if you do have that solid foundation, then you're able to help teach, train, stretch yourself. You can handle the storms when they come because you've got a firm foundation. But when you let that slip, it's really important. I know it's what you're talking about, is that you then become vulnerable, and you're not as good at being a leader when you're dealing with some sort of stressor outside of work, and it does affect you. And I'm talking from experience, having been a leader for 30 years. I've had points in my life where certain legs are falling down, whether it was physical or whether it was spiritual or emotional, or financial. Those things, they get you off kilter, and then your mind is focused on other things. You can't be present with your team. Yeah, a big part of it is to lead yourself first. That's a big part of leadership. And it sounds like you recognize that through all this research. And as you started applying and thinking about your life, it's like these are very important foundational issues. You got to know, take care of yourself, but you also have to know yourself and know, what do I want to be? What's my mission in life? Where do I want to be? What's my why, as you say in the book, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The that concept of self-leadership wasn't foreign to me. And when I had these big failures, I would go, man, I know better. Like, what is my issue here? And when you start looking at what drives you, what is it that you're looking for in your day to day? And we're all looking for one thing: happiness. That sense of well-being, satisfaction, being comfortable, but being happy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're struggling with PTSD and you're denying that you're having issues, you're chasing this dopamine fix. That's, veterans and first responders, divorce rates are really, really high.
Oh, very high. Absolutely. One of the reasons I got out, by the way. So I kind of like my wife. I want to stay with her. So, yeah.
But you find that your relationships suffer, start self-medicating, or, risky behavior where, there's adrenaline junkies. They do stupid stuff just to get that thrill, get that endorphin rush.
Mm-hmm.
There's, infidelity. You get a little bit of attention from somebody somebody that you're attracted to. They show you a little bit of attention. You're like, oh, well, that feels good. Let me see where this goes, when you know better. Gambling. There's all these things where we get that dopamine hit, and we're chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's false. It's a short-term high, but it's the long-term. It's going to lead to you're leaving, issues unresolved when you're doing that. And you're just sort of putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and you're not solving it. You're just sort of medicating it and hoping it'll get better. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that I was living my life with a very short-sighted perspective. I wasn't playing the long game. Mm-hmm. I was all about the here and now. And so I started just developing this plan for myself, and it was separate from my book. And then I'm like, well, this is really good. I need to put this in the book. This is a lot better than what I was writing, because this is going to be developing a leader that has a self-awareness and a purpose. Like, they're going to know their purpose beyond their occupation. They're going to know their purpose, and they can help others find theirs and lift them up. And that's really what I feel like that's what it's all about. For me, that's what it's all about, is helping others. You add value to yourself so that you are better equipped to add value to those that you're leading. And I think that's where the real satisfaction and the real happiness comes in, is when you're able to improve somebody else's life and you're able to help them achieve their version of success. As a leader, that's the top, that's the pinnacle right there. When the people that you're leading achieve their version of success, that's when you can feel like you've achieved something, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's no longer about you. I always say, when you're the leader, it's about, it's about the mission and the team. It's no longer about you. And if you do those things right, I always say, if you take care of the mission, you take care of the people, the good things will happen. You don't have to, there's some people that just focus on climbing the corporate ladder, right? And they don't care about the people necessarily or the mission. They just care about their own political career, to get up the ladder. But what I've seen is those people move up a few rungs, but then they always kind of fall. It's the people that care about the people and the mission. Those are the ones that end up being, getting more and more opportunities to do it at a bigger level. And that makes a lot of sense. Knowing your why, I think it's really important. Sounds like you, through this process, found your why, and it ended up in this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a process to really figure out your own. And it's just taking a little bit of time to look internally, and answer some tough questions for yourself. I know, like I've given a lot of the books away. I've provided quite a few copies to people, and just to get their feedback. And some do the work in the book and they love it, and then others are like, it's a great book, man, but I'm not in a place where I'm ready to look at that.
I'm not ready for this.
Yeah,
I get it. No, I get it, because you're right. I mean, if you're in those in that situation where you're, you don't want to break free of those short-term fixes that you put yourself in. A lot of times people, unfortunately, have to hit rock bottom before they come out of it. And the smart people will put a stop to it. They'll figure out, I got to stop this before I hit rock bottom, and and this book is going to help people to find that those that are willing to open the cover, read through it, they're going to get that direction that, okay, maybe this is telling me I need to stop, and I need to rethink, and I need to figure out, why am I here? What do I want to do? What's my true purpose in life? And this is a good book for that, because you're sharing a lot of your experiences from your career throughout the whole process. So, Dave, this has been fantastic. Where can people find out more about you and this new book?
Everything is on my website. All of my social media links are on the very first page of the website, top corner. It's hollenbachleadership.com. And you can find my book on there. You can find my podcast. Everything is on there. So have at it. And if anybody has any questions for me personally, I do read the messages on my social media. I will be the one that responds to them. So
fantastic. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes so that people can find you. And Dave, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences and this exciting new book.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to your audience.
Yeah, thank you again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
If you're a working professional wondering what's next for your career, you've come to the right place. Whether you're looking for a promotion, growth, or a potential career transition, look no further. With over 30 years working in a variety of industries, I share my insider knowledge with those ready to get ahead on Career Advancement with Craig Ansell. Tune in to get your strategies for success.
Welcome to Ringside with Ray and Prince. My name is Ray Leonard Jr.
Oh, is that the set? No, that's just my dad.
My name is Prince Daniels Jr.
Daniels again with a big hole. Touchdown.
On this show, we come to humanize
Athletes, entertainers, business executives. We're going to see what makes them tick.
Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there. Peace and power.
Electric acid.